Hey everyone, this is Nicky, aka NickFish03, and I'm going to give you a unboxing video of the Katadyn Vario. Not sure if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to say Katadyn. So I got it from Cabela's with a gift card, shipped to the store, and here's the box. I haven't opened it yet, so I have no idea exactly what I'm getting. Packing slip, advertisement. Wow. I should get a free sample. Cool. Okay, I also ordered two carbon replacements, refills. So normally you wouldn't get this with the actual package, but I got it because it was an option, so I just got it for 10 extra bucks. $5 per packet. Okay, that's it. So here we have a box for the Vario. Backcountry series, high output, a lot of stuff I already know. Gonna give you an example of how I came about to decide that this is the filter I wanted. This is actually the first filter I've ever owned. I've used filters, I've never purchased one. So I got two sheets here, and actually they're pretty much about the same. This one's just a little more unorganized. So I was looking at four options. Well, kind of more. These were the four options on the Cabela's website. I was also looking at the UV light, the SteriPen, but I decided against that just for long-term use and because the technology is still relatively new, and the issue with not being able to sanitize the top of the water bottle as well as the threads, which technically you can't do that on here either, but because you're not putting contaminated water into your container, it's not an issue. So I went through the specs for the Katadyn Vario, Hiker Pro, MSR MiniWorks, and Sweetwater. And just as examples, I put down all the specs, like what kind of filter, what kind of pre-filter, is it cleanable, how fast does it go, what's the weight, what's the MSRP, what's the street price. Actually, I didn't put the MSRP down, I just put the street price. $80 on Amazon for the Vario, $95 at Cabela's. Dual action pump, and then replaceable carbon, and it also has the bladder tube port, base thread for Nalgene, and clip-on hose. So then, towards the bottom I did some math. I have $40 per new cartridge, 500 gallons per cartridge, $5 per carbon pack, $13 per ceramic disc. You're supposed to replace the disc after 200 cleanings, which is variable. So the way I costed it out is $220, so that's unit price, replacement, and carbon. For 1,000 gallons is $220. And then because you don't have to buy a new unit, 2,000 gallons is $400. So I was looking at the SteriPen, and you had to include the cost of the batteries and the unit, but then you had to completely replace the unit for, I think it's about 80 bucks. Well, let me check, I got it on here. Yeah, 80 bucks per unit, $2 per CR123 battery, and so that's $240 for 1,000 gallons. So that's costing to be about the same, and then $400 versus $480 for the SteriPen. So I've also got the Katadyn Hiker, which is by far the most cost efficient out of all of these. The Hiker Pro is $160 for 1,000 gallons, $290 for 2,000. So that beats all the options in terms of cost efficiency. But it doesn't have a pre-filter, doesn't have the replaceable carbon, and it's just I decided to go with more utilities. So MiniWorks, why didn't I choose the MSRs? They're both fine. The MiniWorks looked pretty nice because it was completely field maintainable with that ceramic filter. But it doesn't have any carbon. Not necessary, obviously. But I was looking for a long-term purchase. So if I'm planning on using this first in the Boundary Waters, not a big deal. You could use any one of these. The water would taste fine. But if I go hiking, let's say in Idaho, where the water may not be as clean, it's going to be really nice to have that carbon and that pre-filter to make sure the water's tasting okay. Just saying, I am not picky about my water. I've been using Polar Pure and iodine tabs and chlorine tabs and sometimes bleach. Doesn't bother me at all. So I'm just looking at long term, so I decided to go with the Vario. A little more information than you probably wanted, but here we go. Okay. So we have the unit itself. Excuse me, that's my phone. Okay, it's giving a warning to make sure that the holes are lined up. Okay. So we got a little. Okay, that would be the input hose. Down here is the output. Got this little cap to protect it from becoming contaminated, as well as serves the purpose of becoming a hydration tube attachment. Looks like if you... There's two notches right here. Not quite sure what that's going to be for. I suppose if you don't want any water to leak out, then you would have the attachment point turned 90 degrees, so theoretically no water would seep out, but I doubt that would actually affect the water. Alright, so as I said, this is a dual action pump. There we go. Alright. Looks like we have two one-way valves here. Yep, you can hear them. So here is the ceramic pre-filter. And it says longer life and faster flow. Looks like we have some silicone lubricant or something there. Okay, so pre-filter just pops off. Now this is what I was warning about, to make sure that this notch is lined up correctly. I know one or two people have reviewed saying they didn't put it back in correctly and it was leaking in the housing, and they were confused but finally figured it out. So we have the glass fiber main filter here. Got an O-ring on the bottom for the output. Then this red is for the carbon. Okay, then you have this, as you can see here, this green, I don't know what you would call that, just a stopper. See if I can get that out. And there's the carbon. Alright, it looks, I just happen to have my Brita filter here, and it looks similar, but it's actually less refined. The Brita, the carbon in the Brita filters is quite a bit smaller in terms of its size. It's not too much different, but it just looks less refined, which doesn't matter at all. There's a little O-ring on the carbon point. Stick this back in. So you want to push that all the way in because that tube is all the same diameter, so it doesn't matter. And stick that back in. Got 2 O-rings here. Alright. Put that back together. So there's 1, 2, 3 notches, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Let's take a look at the bottom actually. So yeah, just complete straight through design. Then on the bottom here is the actual nozzle. If you're to attach the hose, and then that nozzle would attach to the bladder output. So you just stick your bladder tube right in there. Looks like, might be, yep, looks conical in shape. Alright, so the base is actually threaded. So that will hook straight on to an Nalgene, which I have right here. Wide mouth Nalgene hooked straight on. Now just to give you some specs, it will hook on to a 2 looks like about just over 2 1/8 inches diameter water bottles. So we got that. Back to the directions. Okay, so it's saying for the carbon, what do they call it? Cover of carbon core, you want that flush. How did I get this off? You want that flush with the top there. Okay, so there's a pre-filter as well on the input hose. Here's the output hose. Comes with a Ziploc. I have heard that these Ziplocs are kind of flimsy. I haven't decided if I'm going to replace it with a freezer Ziploc. Feels fine to me. And you can see the little clip attachment. Scrubby. It's like extra O-rings and silicone lubricant. Alright. Here we have the output hose, screen pre-filter, float, styrofoam, and a weight. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume no difference to that. So you put the float on, you put the pre-filter on, which is ridged. Actually, I want to make sure we don't have to put any lubricant on it. Intake. Note, apply a small amount of lubricant to this strainer barb to ease assembly. The pre-filter is important because it prevents large particles larger than 130 microns from entering the water system. Alright, so you do want to put a little lubricant on it, but not absolutely necessary. Product setup. Filter modes. To change the filter mode, detach pump head by turning and lifting. Hold the housing in one hand, turn the ceramic pre-filter until the arrow points to the desired mode. Reattach pump head and close tight. Okay, so in order to change modes, you must completely take the head off, put on faster flow, stick it back on. So this is threaded, so it'll lock in place right here. So that shouldn't affect the flow setting. There we go. So that's 30-degree turn, and that'll lock it into place, theoretically making this watertight. Flush system. Important before first use. Flush system by pumping 1 liter of water through the unit to remove harmless carbon dust, just as you would with a Brita filter. Discolored water is fine. Okay, to maintain your Katadyn, if the handle is hard to operate, lubricate O-rings. So there's this, what do they call it? There's a axis, no? A coin, yeah, an axis. So there's an axis here. You can say, they say you can use a coin, but you really don't need that. Just grab here, this little rectangle, push that through. There we go. So you take the axis out, take the top cover off, and then what you do is you pull the handle just straight out. So there you have your 2 pistons. You want to lubricate those O-rings if it becomes hard to handle, hard to pump, and clean excess buildup from black rubber O-rings on pistons. Yep. So that's about it. And then you would just replace it. So this is good because I read someone said that this wasn't field maintainable in comparison to the MiniWorks, which theoretically it's not as maintainable as the MiniWorks, but they were saying that the MiniWorks was considerably easier to take apart. This wasn't difficult at all as long as you know how to do it before you go into the field. Put it back together. Axis goes, can only go in one way, so no problem with that. So I just want to realign that rectangle. Pull the handle up a little bit to align the axis. Push it through. Give it a 1/4 turn. Good to go. So that's that. What else do we have? Clean intake pre-filter. So I put together the pre-filter. Wasn't too difficult. So you had these separated and the little mesh pre-filter. You stick the mesh pre-filter in through here. Here's the barb. Put a little silicone lubricant on that, stick it in, keep wiggling the tubing onto it. That was the only difficult part, just because it's a really tight fit. What else do we have? So then you also, for long-term storage, you want to fill a liter container with 2 tablespoons of bleach. So this is after your trip, or if you're going to be putting it in storage for a while. And then you want to place the ceramic filter into the solution. Pump the entire amount of solution through the unit. Make sure all remaining water goes through. Brush the pre-filter. Rinse the housing. Lubricate the O-rings. Reassemble. After making sure it's completely dried, which they didn't emphasize, but you definitely should. Cartridge capacity 500 gallons. Replacement cartridge, refill carbon core every 50 gallons. I don't think I stated that earlier, but that is what they say. Carbon lasts for about 6 months. 50 gallons. That's really. They say here, or after 6 months of use, whichever comes first. And they just give some precautions on cleanliness. So note on the cleanliness. I recently read a tip which I hadn't thought of before, which is a very good point. So let's just say this is the out hose. Here's the actual out hose, but let's say this is the out hose, and I pull it out of this little pouch. And I just sneezed on my hands, or I was cleaning some algae off of something, or I picked something up out of the contaminated water. And I touch this hose, and if I stick, or the end of the hose, and I stick the end of the hose in my Nalgene, or my Camelback, that's technically contaminated now. So that person suggested to, whenever you fill your water, use some Purell. I'm really not that much of a stickler for such a minute amount of contamination. I've never heard of anybody else that actually does that and or has gotten sick because of touching their hose. Obviously, if your hand is dripping wet, or you've got gloves that are just completely wet from contaminated water, you're going to want to do something about that. But generally, I don't think it's a big deal, but if you want to be 100%, you want to use Purell before you touch the hose. I believe that's all I got for this video. I may do some tests with this in the near future, and either tape the tests and or the results and post them to you guys, because there's actually not that much not many videos. There's a decent amount of literature from customer reviews on the Vario, but not surprisingly not that much. So I'm going to try and get that out to you guys when I get around to testing it. Otherwise, thanks for watching and have a great day.